Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Collaborative Innovation webinar series presented by Business Innovation Brief in partnership with Innovation Enterprise. We'd like to thank RocketSpace for sponsoring this webinar series. Today is the last in our series, and RocketSpace has helped us to make this possible. If you haven't heard of RocketSpace, they are helping some of the largest corporations around the world expand their innovation pipeline through startup partnerships and collaborative industry accelerator programs. For registrants of this webinar series, RocketSpace will provide a free copy of their disruption report that includes the top trends of 2017, along with startups within the following tech themes: communication, customer experience, connectivity and IoT, and mobility and transportation. So thanks again to RocketSpace. My name is Chris Bechtel, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Again, today is the last in our series of 6. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers that we've had. I'd encourage all of you, if you haven't yet, to visit our webinar page and listen to the previous webinars. We'll be sending all of you an email within the next day or so that will recap today's webinar, include a set of the slides along with a link to the recording. You can also access all of the previous webinars and those recordings. Our goal, of course, has been to help you keep up to date with the latest trends and best practices and case studies in corporate innovation. We are pleased to have with us today on our final recap, our final webinar for today, is Gordon Vala Webb. And Gordon has been a speaker, an innovation professional, an organization transformer, and an award-winning knowledge management practitioner and thought leader. He has 17 plus years of experience helping public and private sector organizations become smarter. Gordon is the author of Building Smarter Organizations: How to Lead Your Zombie Organization Back to Life, available through Elevate Publishing or Amazon. Encourage all of you to get that book. Previous roles he's had include National Director of Knowledge Management for PwC Canada, National Director of Innovation and Information at Macmillan LLP, and Cabinet Office Policy Advisor in Ontario. Teams he's led have won a number of awards, including Jive World's New Ways in Business and the Showcase Ontario Award for Organizational Transformation. Gordon is a member of the Board of Directors of the International Association of Innovation Professionals, and he holds a master's degree in Management of Technology. He lives in Toronto, Canada. We're pleased to have Gordon with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Chris, and welcome everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to take you through some of the ideas that I have around how to accelerate collaboration through connecting and collaborating. And so why don't we get started? There'll be an opportunity for folks to participate along the way. Chris, I'm looking for the controls on my screen here to advance the slides.
Yes, just mouse over the bottom. If you hold your mouse over the bottom of the slide, it'll appear for you
perfect.
there.
Thank you. I apologize for that. So you'll see the zombie theme kind of coming forward here, and that's because I think many of our existing organizations are stuck in a slow-moving, non-thinking kind of approach. So let's get started. So first off, who am I? You've already heard from Chris a fair bit about me. There's a picture of my book. The big news is there that the book was actually literally released today. So if you're interested, I would be delighted to, if you were to read it and let me know about it. So let's find out about you, though, and let's go to our first poll. Chris, if you can poll folks in terms of whether or not they've worked in a large organization or not. Let's give some folks, wow, looks like everybody, a couple of folks haven't. I think that's probably enough. Chris, what do you think? So, and the other one is, who out there likes zombie movies? Maybe we could get you to poll on that one. So, not at all, slightly, moderately, very much, or totally. Now, I don't know if you noticed it, but on the screen back there, it was actually a picture from one of my favorite zombie movies. I'm not like a hardcore zombie guy, but Zombieland is, I think, a real fun movie, even for people that are not big zombie fans, of which I see there's quite a number. One big fan, I would say, one in the middle, and everyone else is kind of down at the not so much category. All right, why don't we close that poll? Looks like I can do that myself. And there's the Zombieland movie. So I want to talk a little bit about why I wrote the book. And really it was a combination of three things. First off, I worked in a whole bunch of different organizations in various industries, public sector, private sector, and you see some of the logos from some of the places that I worked at. And one of the things I kept seeing over and over again was I saw unhappy, disengaged people. The Gallup poll is sort of consistently showing that in North America, around 70% of people are disengaged from their work. And actually in North America, we're doing better than the rest of the world. So you see all of these people that are unhappy and disengaged with their work. And you see a sort of command and control culture, which is fault-finding, patriarchal, and actually a surprisingly large number of leaders with psychopathic tendencies. There's a wonderful book called Suits in Snakes that quotes some studies that put the rate of leaders in organizations that are psychopaths at 4 times the general population. And I recently saw an Australian study that said not full-blown psychopaths, but people with psychopathic tendencies was 20 times more prevalent in organizational leadership than in the general population. I think that gives some real pause for thought. So I saw the organizations and I saw people that were unhappy. The other thing is, one of the other reasons I wrote the book is I kind of like technology. This is a picture literally of the first computer I worked on. I won't tell you how old that is. That's a UNIVAC 1100 that you're looking at right there. And nowadays, it's just fascinating to me that digital is transforming everything. The sort of computers that we saw 20, 30, 40 years ago are really, we are in an extraordinary age of where technology is having such a big impact. And so another reason I wrote the book is the world is clearly becoming much more uncertain, volatile, ambiguous, and I think really we need to leave the world in a better place than we found it. And this is from a quote from one of my favorite children's books, Miss Rumphius. My attempt at making the world a more beautiful place is to help organizations to become smarter in the context of that volatile, uncertain world, using that new technology, and in the process, changing organizational culture and making people much happier to go to work most of the time. So let me describe to you what I think is really the fundamental problem that organizations are facing today. There's a quote there on the left-hand side from General McChrystal. He was commander of the international forces in Afghanistan. We've moved to a much more data-rich but uncertain time where knowledge is just increasing exponentially. The graph on the right-hand side shows the doubling time for medical knowledge. Back in the 1950s, you could sort of count on your medical knowledge that you learned in medical school, sort of lasting 25 years or so. By this time, we're down to your medical knowledge down to a couple of years or a year or less, and it's rapidly reaching months. So we have this knowledge rich environment and data-rich environment, but much greater uncertainty. And one of the impacts on organizations is that they're facing this idea of an obsolescence squeeze. This comes from a guy called Dan McClure, whereby it used to you could sort of spend money to invent something, and you'd have a long kind of harvest period for that product or service that you're offering. But now that harvesting period has been much reduced, and really what you have are sort of cycles of investments, invention, with brief periods of harvesting. And this is the sort of obsolescence squeeze. If you're not, as an organization, able to invent or reinvent your products or service continually, you will get squeezed out, and you simply won't make the money that you need in order to survive. And I argue in the book that what organizations need is in order to survive this VUCA, this volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous, and digital world, is a complete change in the way the sort of fundamental capabilities of an organization. In the old world, we're talking, particularly 70s and 80s, 90s, your strategy was to grow big. You get economy of scale. You want to become repetitive. Keep repeating what you're doing. Get incrementally better at that. And your emphasis was on control and analysis. This is the period of process reengineering and Six Sigma and the rest of it. Some other things that didn't work particularly well. Matrix management. We can talk about that a little bit later on. But to face the new world, again, Dan McClure has this wonderful term of radically responsive. You need radically responsive organizations that can innovate and predict what's going to happen. You can't control. There's no point. Your analytical abilities are really should be focused on trying to look ahead rather than trying to figure out what happened previously. And I think there's this fundamental difference between what I call zombie organizations. They're stuck in that old world model where they're facing inwards and repeating what they did previously. And smart organizations need to sort of face forward and face externally, and really shifting to this ability to try to interpret what's going on in a complex and ambiguous world. Figure out what kinds of things that the organization might do that would be different, place bets on those changes. And in large respect, every decision that an organization makes is a bet. You hire someone into a job, you're basically betting that there is enough work for a person for the next foreseeable future, that you're making a bet on that person, and the amount of the bet is kind of your recruitment effort, the hiring process, the upspeeding and training time, and the lost productivity while you're kind of covering off, waiting for this person to join you. So every decision, even one as simple as hiring a new person, is making a prediction about the future and making a bet. And I'm saying that organizations need to get better at all those decisions. And in order to do that, a lot of it has to do with connecting and collaborating outside of the organization. So let's just take a pause here. Many of you have worked in a large organization. I'm going to provide you with a test, a quick little test to see if yours is a zombie organization. So get out a little pen and paper if you're old school, or just jot this down on a notepad on your phone. But I'm going to give you the Z test, so to see how much of a zombie your large organization is. So first off, let's talk about innovation in a zombie organization. If there was an org chart for it, this is kind of what it would look like. I particularly like, the fact that the manager of new growth ideas is a vacant position. All the rest of them are filled, including the director of owners reporting and the director of rigidity. This is, for those of you that have worked in the large organizations, this is really what it does feel like. There should be a kind of director there's a VP of state of the course. There should be a director of protecting the outside of the organizations to not permit any new ideas to come in or disconfirming information. All right, so you ready with those pen and paper or with your phone? Here's the, we're going to take the test in 3 sections. Don't worry, it's like, 10 yes or no questions. So it's really very straightforward. And they're in the 3 areas: decision-making, communication, and collaboration, and sort of mindset. So here we go. So the first set of true or false questions: thinking of your organization, thinking of what the sort of behavior you see in the organization, would you say that it's true that a lot of the time, most of the time, you see that coordinating work with people is hard in other parts of the organization, that it's easy to get a no and hard to get a yes, and that meetings are typically useless and unproductive? So give you just a minute to, so we're going to take these results up at the end, but just note down for yourself whether or not, which ones of those you think are true for your organization. So if we just talk for a second about decision-making in an organization, this is an actual, from a study Bain and company did of one change to a contract in an aerospace company. This was a map of who had to connect with, how many transactions there were, who was involved in the transaction. You had over 700 interactions. 125 different people were involved in order to make one change. So this, for me, drives home the need to get better at decision making and better at collaborating and better at exchanging information. All right, so we're going to move on to the next section of the Z test. Hope you've got your how many truths did you have for the first one. Here we're talking about communication and collaborating. So would you say it's generally true there's too many emails and other internal communications, that people don't know what is going on across the organization? And finally, that it's hard for someone to get useful feedback on their ideas. So how many truths do you have for this large organization that you're thinking about? Just pause for a minute. Allow you to think of it. You should, this is, I should say, this is supposed to be an engaging study, but you shouldn't put too much thought into it. And we just sort of talk a lot about email as one that I hear perennially from people, that what a problem people have around email. It's sort of overwhelming people with its volume. You see this ironic thing whereby people report that they are inundated with email, and yet they don't know what's going on. And you'll see some numbers there around the number of emails that people get, and the amount of more than a quarter of the week by interaction workers. So that would be most of you, all of you on the call, I'm sure. Many of the people in your organization are spent in just processing email. So third part of the Z score, and then we'll get to taking them up, is around mindset. The mindset that you see in the organization, would you say that the leadership in your organization prefers to spout slogans rather than to deal with reality? That the people there, I think this is the reason most people are in LinkedIn, is that they're hoping to work somewhere else, and they're in LinkedIn because they're hoping some recruiter will reach down and give them their dream job for twice as much money as they're making. And that the mind that you see in the organization, the behavior that the organization doesn't learn from our mistakes, that we infrequently learn from the mistakes that are made, and that people don't trust each other very much. So again, just note down how many of those are true for you. I mean, just to sort of talk a little bit about the leadership idea. How many of you, you can't answer me, but this sort of picture of a soaring eagle around leadership is a poster you'll see quite often in particularly North American workplaces. I always think it's sort of ironic because, of course, the soaring eagle is far above where the work is actually happening. The eagle is seeking out the little mice making mistake and is ready to swoop down and grab them when they do make a mistake and eat them. Not a very nice outcome. And I think in some respects that's how many organizations work, that they spout this slogan around leadership, but they don't really nurture vulnerability. And there's a little quote there from Brene Brown about the importance of vulnerability to innovation and creativity and change. All right, so let's go to our next poll, if we could, Chris. And what we're doing is we're asking people what your Z score is for the organization that you're reporting on. Is it in the danger zone, 7 to 10? Is it in the sort of on their way there score of 4 to 6, or are you in the safe zone around 1 to 3? So we've got some votes in. We see lots of folks are in that sort of on the way or partway between being safe and being scared. We got one person who's in the what I call the emergency zone. Why don't we close the poll off and you'll see this score. This test, by the way, is available on my website if you want to download the PDF, and you can sort of, one of the things I suggest for people to do if they're interested is sort of print it off and share it with some of the other people in the organization, the leadership, and get them to score it, get them to compare scores and have a conversation about, what those scores mean. Particularly, and where you scored is obviously pretty important as well. So, I mean, the title of this presentation is really around this idea of accelerating innovation around connecting and collaborating, and I really want to sort of focus now on that part of the presentation on my talk, and really there are 3 keys to it. This idea of fast flow communications, this idea of an open mindset, and this idea of accelerated decision making. You'll see that those kind of reflect the sort of the main themes in the Z score, from earlier on, what it is that a smart organization needs, and I mean, there's a chapter on each one of those in the book. So I'm really just going to skim over the surface of the sort of what it is that you need to think about. But let's really sort of think about this fast flow communications idea. And by communications, I really mean the ability of ideas or information or knowledge or answers to questions can move into and through the organization. I'll explain those pictures on the right first. So those are flow systems. So the sort of green one on the left is an aerial picture of a sort of river tidal, a river system. River basin, the river ends and flows its water out into the ocean. The picture on the right is of a lung and the flow of air into and out of the lung. And what Adrian Bejan, who I quote on the left-hand side there, has written about, and he's sort of developed this idea of a constructal law about flow. So basically, Adrian Bejan makes the argument that there are many, many things that are flow systems, like lungs, like Amazon river basins, but also like organizations where there is a flow that is moving through the organization, and that you can actually, that there's a sort of an optimal kind of design for that flow. And basically what I would argue is that we have many structures within our organization that are set up to constrict the flow of information, both into, through, and up the organization. Of course, these ideas are kind of interrelated, because one of the reasons that there is a limited flow of information up the ladder to people higher than yourself is if you have a sort of blame and shame culture where the messenger, where the messenger gets shot, the flow of information or ideas is definitely impeded, and you see this many times with ideas being impeded, because you might have a great idea that could help change things substantially, but there's an existing business unit who might get hurt by that idea, the implementation of that idea, and then they resist it. So this idea of having flows is a really important one, and I think one of the email is actually, as a communication system, it's a platform for communicating and collaborating, and it really does form the backbone of most organizations most of the time. It's actually a really bad system for accelerating the flow of information and ideas in an organization, into an organization, and through an organization. It's just, again, there's a whole, there's a part of the chapter I devote to why it is that email is such a bad system, that the email as a technology was invented 40 years ago. The kind of header structure and the fundamental information architecture of emails that those two from redate was actually developed over 100 years ago. And we are just trying to do way too much for a system that wasn't built for it. There's that quote on the left hand, it's not a quote, but Bill French many years ago said, email is where knowledge goes to die. So one of the problems with email is that it's very ephemeral. You get an email today, but it's both closed, i.e. if you're not on that email distribution list, you don't get to see that email. And second off, it is ephemeral, and it's hard for people that were, even those that were actually on the email distribution list, it's hard for them to find stuff in a month or two or six, or let alone years later on. And part of that is because, and the picture on the right-hand side of the sort of complex telephone wires is really supposed to illustrate that it's actually a very difficult medium for consuming large amounts of information, and that's because all the emails come to you basically, randomly, with very little context or information. So the alternative, which organizations are moving to, is some sort of enterprise networking platform. In smaller organizations, many people are making use of Slack, for example, Team Chat. Larger organizations, I was part of a rollout of the Jive platform in PwC globally to 175,000 people in 150 countries. These social networking platforms have a fundamentally different way of sharing information. They put the information, the content, the comment, the answer to the question, the document in the middle, and then it's available to people. Anyone who has access, has appropriate rights to it, can find it across time. It always has context. Conversing or working on a document or having a conversation inside of these platforms is so much easier. And you know the context for that conversation, and you know if you want to know more about who's talking in the conversation, you just click on their name and you get their profile and you see what else they've written. You have a search engine, everybody can search across everything. So I don't want to go into it too much, but really, you know, enterprise networking or the sort of enterprise team chat is a fundamentally different architecture for collaborating and communicating across organizations. And of course, you want to create, you know, this is a clearly very solid boundaries, but I think for organizations, and this gets back to connecting and collaborating outside the organization, you want to make that ability for the fast flow of ideas and information and questions to have a sort of semi-permeable boundary with the outside, that there are trusted others outside the organization that should be part of this enterprise network or team chat space. So not just anybody can walk in and be part of the conversation, but you might have a supplier, a vendor. You might have alumni who worked there last year. Now they've gone on to another great job, but you still trust them. They're not working for a competitor, and you value their information and knowledge, and you sort of continue to have them connected. At PwC, part of the big reason for doing what they wanted to do was not simply to connect people within the organization together, but to connect people within the organization to people outside the organization, to clients or potential clients or regulators or academics that were writing in topics that were pertinent to PwC. So you don't want this, castle wall, which I think we've had for such a long time in an organization. You want to create that network to have a permeable or semi-permeable boundary with other folks. So let's move on to the open mindset, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think it's really important that we move from this command and control culture that so many organizations have, do it because I tell you to do it. You can trace this thinking back to Max Weber and monocratic bureaucracy, role differentiation, specificity, and you can trace it back to scientific management, and the idea that you should have best practices developed. Everyone should simply apply the best practice. These are forms of kind of command and control. Just do what we tell you to do, or do what the best practice tells you to do, because we've done this thing 100 or 1,000 times before. We know exactly how to do it. Don't think, just do. One of the other posters you'll often see in North America is a bunch of people rowing together, one person sort of steering and everyone else rowing. They're actually repeating identically what they were doing before. I've done that. It's a lot of fun, but you're told you're meat on a stick. Don't think about of anything. Just follow the guy in front of you, the rhythm, the cadence. Just keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Again, it's a fascinating thing, and we got that Brene Brown quote. I pulled it again, but it's so important that to create this ability for people to be connected and contribute together. And in order for people to do that, they need to be vulnerable. In order for people to share an idea, even to ask a question, is actually making themselves vulnerable. Because in sharing that idea, in asking that question, they're showing, I don't know the answer to this question, or this idea might be a dumb idea, but I'm going to put it out there. And if you have a culture where people are shamed and blamed, people will not make themselves vulnerable. They will not ask questions. They will not share information. What if the information they share is wrong or out of date? They will not share their ideas. And creating that open mindset is absolutely critical to getting people to be both share their ideas and be open to other people's ideas, and open to disconfirming information. We thought, the Houston office was really going well, but the new data shows that maybe it's not going so well. Now we need to do something about it. You need to be open to that kind of information. And I think part of that is to create a shared purpose and a brand. And the reason you want shared purpose is that you want everyone in your organization to understand the core idea of what that organization is about, and to therefore be seeking and information, feedback, and sensing what's going on. Many organizations will have like a customer information group or a strategy group or a part of the marketing team will sort of be focused on outside of the organization. What's going on outside the organization? What's going on with our customers? What's going on with our competitors? But imagine if instead of 10 or 20 or 30 people, you had 100, 1,000, 10,000 of the people working in your organization that know what direction the organization is going in and are sensing and looking for feedback about what's going on out there that could have an impact on the organization. And so the only way to get that sort of large volume of people, A, engaged and B, aligned, is to help them orient towards the purpose of the organization. So by open mindset, I mean both this shifting into a sort of connect and collaborate mindset, but also a mindset whereby the people in the organization understand and are aligned with and share the fundamental purpose of the organization. And listen, Coca-Cola has I won't give it to you now, but if you want to Google it up, you can Google up what's Coca-Cola's fundamental purpose that I think many of you could even get behind, even though they're selling sugar water that is probably dangerous to people's health. Accounting firms have posted their purpose, talking about, and you read them and you think, yeah, I could get behind that. That makes sense to me. I would want to be part of that kind of organization. So if accounting firms and soda pop companies can do it, I think you can as well. And of course, I think particularly the brand helps align people from outside your organization and help them connect to your purpose. And then if you have an enterprise social networking platform whereby it's easy for there to be a fast flow of communication, of ideas, of knowledge, of information, then these two things work together. That open mindset, the connecting to purpose, particularly through brand. And you see this often in many organizations whereby they've invested in building user communities. You see this around not just on the technology side, software side. Starbucks has worked very hard at their brand and getting people engaged with their brand and using those people to contribute ideas to products for Starbucks and how it is they might create new ways for people to interact with Starbucks. It's been a big success for them. So again, I think if that open mindset and that if you can project your purpose externally through your brand in particular, to engage people, to share their information, their knowledge, get them committed to what it is that you're doing, it's just so powerful for driving innovation. And so in this sort of trilogy of key things you need to know, I think accelerating decision making. So let's say you've got fast flow communication through a team chat or an enterprise network, and you've moved off email to do that. And let's say you've got a culture of collaborating, connecting, and you've defined your purpose, and people really experience the purpose of the organization so that they are spontaneously aligned and want to contribute their information and knowledge and ideas. You still need to make decisions. You need to choose where you're going to invest your time, your money, the bets you're going to make. I think one of the basic things that people can do and organizations can do is really work on spotting the key cross-silo decisions that need to be made. So heat map where those organizational decisions that need to be made, identify where those cross-silo ones are going to be. We're actually pretty good in most organizations most of the time, aside from psychopathic leaders and email overwhelming people, but we're not too bad at making decisions within a silo using a chain of command. I'm a big fan of hierarchy. I think hierarchy works. Hierarchy is a way, it's a flow system for distributing decision making, and it actually works pretty well. The problem is that many of the critical decisions that organizations are facing, the ones around innovation and change, are cross-silo, cross-functional silos or cross-geographical silos or cross-product silos. And that's really, so one of the first things you can do is really map out where those cross-silo organizations are going to be happening. And then I think you need to build a decision management capability, an open platform for making those decisions. And this really isn't a technology so much as a sort of a framework for making those cross-silo decisions. In the book, I suggest some mechanisms for cross-silo decision making to make sure that you don't end up with what happens right now with many cross-silo decisions, which is the puck gets ragged. Sorry, I'm a Canadian, so I'll give you a hockey now. They rag the puck for a while until time runs out, then they kick it up to the highest possible person that they can reach, and then that person with a short period of time makes a decision based on what he or she, normally it's a he, knows. So you get like a single brain making a decision in a limited time frame. The other way to make decisions in the cross-silo basis, which also doesn't work, is the sort of lowest common denominator. You eventually get some silo leaders together. They talk about it for a while. They finally agree on something, which is the least that all of them can agree on, and then that's the decision. Typically not the best decision. And so I think you need to develop a framework for making those decisions. The picture on the right is actually of adaptive case management. So you actually manage decisions like cases. You have frameworks and methods, and just like you have sort of data analysts, you have knowledge management people, you can have decision managers that don't make the decision, but they help the organization to be much better at making decisions that they do need to make. And of course, fast flow communication and helps enormously with that. And those decisions, if you make them in isolation, based simply on the people inside the organization, you're missing out on a lot of value, you're missing out on a lot of information, and you really ought to be thinking about, including those outside of the fence. Now, on boards of directors, you'll of course see this. You have outside members of the board of directors sitting. Why are they there? Because at the very highest level, people understand that having others from outside the organization are immensely helpful in making sure that you're looking at all of the different perspectives in the organization. And so you want to involve people from outside the organization. Of course, you're going to be appropriate. If you're making a decision about what software product to buy, you can't, involve a vendor from one of the people who has their product model. I'm not suggesting that, but I am suggesting you can involve others who are knowledgeable about the industry and would have something to contribute. And I should say, and I missed this out earlier on, but that open mindset is this idea of sort of connecting in others is super important from a diversity point of view. You need people from different walks of life, from different life experiences, from different industries, from different life experiences, to be bringing their mind to the decision that you're making, and really the sort of inside the town. We leave in many organizations, particularly the higher you go, we leave women or persons with disabilities or visible minorities outside the fence. Technically, they're inside the organization, or at least some of them are some of the time, but we leave them out of the major decisions. And what the result of that, setting aside the moral and legal implications of doing so, is that we're losing what I would say is a very valuable piece, which is their lived experiences, their knowledge, their perspectives will help make your decisions better, and that's what leads to innovation and change. So change is hard, and I'm not going to go into this in a big way, but you know what? Let's do a check-in with folks on this, and we'll do a little poll on how hard you think it is to make change in your organization. And while you're voting on that, finding the buttons, I had the quote up there from Niccolo Machiavelli, who almost 500 years ago wrote about that there's nothing more perilous to undertake, nothing more uncertain of outcome than undertaking the change in the order of things. And he really, I think, nailed it 500 years ago about how difficult it is for for organizations to make change, for leaders to make change in organizations. And we see many of you, everyone is at the sort of top end of the scale, moderately or completely difficult to make change in organizations. And there's the quote from Niccolo Machiavelli in The Prince. He goes on to say, why is it hard to make change in organizations? And what he says is that everyone in the organization that is currently benefiting from the current system is going to be arrayed against you. He says they'll fight like partisans against you to hang on to what they've got. And everyone who might take advantage, get some advantage, sees the positive outcome from this change, is only going to give you lukewarm support for it. And the reason they're only going to give you lukewarm support at best for it is because until people really experience the change, it's hard for them to get behind it. And they're also afraid of the repercussions from those that are currently doing well under the current system. And I think that's really important to be aware of as you approach whatever change, whatever innovation you're going to undertake in your organization. I'm sure you've seen the quote, "The soft stuff is the hard stuff." I think here are some tips for making change. I think you need to start making change not by announcing a major change program. In fact, in 9 out of 10 times, if you announce that, hey, I'm going to make a big change, the change is almost certainly destined to be a failure because you've just alerted all those partisans to fight against you. So I think what you want to do is find simple things simple changes that you can make that help to shift the equilibrium point. So when you think of organizations, you should think about them as if they're complex adaptive systems, lots of interactions going on. They're really, organizations are cycling, this is the idea of polarity management, cycling between two different poles. There's this stability and keep things going the way they are pole, and the pole of change and innovation. And there's an equilibrium point that the organization is currently sitting at. It's always shifting somewhat. And what you want to do is find the small things that start to knock that equilibrium point towards change and innovation. One of the ways you can do that is using the SCARF model. David Rock has written about this. SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And whenever you approach people, you have to understand that they're not really rational animals. Humans are not really rational animals that have a little bit of feeling. We're really feeling animals that have a bit of rationality. And so if you go to someone right away, they're going to look at you as if looking at whether or not you're going to be attacking, because mostly we're afraid of attacks rather than being attracted to things. Are we attacking someone's status? Are we attacking their certainty? We certainly are when we come to them and say we have a big idea, we should change things. So the SCARF model will help you manage, communicate, and connect with people around their feelings, and those feelings are related in particular to status and certainty, autonomy and relatedness and fairness. And finally, you know what, you need to start before you're ready to begin, because I see the typo there. Start before you're ready to begin, but I like to start before you're ready to being, because it really is, if you need to have a complete plan ahead of time for doing this change stuff, you're never going to get started. You really have to start before you're ready, find some things, see if they work. It's really a probe and test, accentuate where things are working, back off where things aren't working, kind of will serve you in much greater stead. And really that's my ideas for how it is you can build a smarter organization, accelerate innovation through fast flow, communication, through cultivating an open mindset in the organization, and through accelerating decision making and connecting and collaborating outside. So,
Terrific,
I don't know if
Gordon.
anybody is. Thank you.
Yes, wonderful. And thanks everybody for attending. So again, just real quick before we dive into some Q&A. So I'll probably bring, I have a couple of questions here, certainly. So if any of you have additional questions, you can submit them into chat, or you can use the question icon on the top of your screen. So we'll get to some questions to Gordon here in a moment. Again, do want to remind all of you that we are recording the webinar, and we will send out an email with the link so that in case you missed anything, the slides weren't in sync for you, you'll be able to get all of that. I'd also encourage you again here to connect with Gordon. You've got his contact info on your screen here. And I would encourage all of you to, visit his website. You can download his the zombie quiz and take that if you didn't get a chance to do it earlier. I'd encourage all of you to do that, and of course, get his book, which is available I think today. So you can search for it on Amazon and grab that book. So we got just about 7 more minutes here, until we get to the top of the hour. So I'd love to get here a couple of quick questions. So the first question here, Gordon, is, how do you avoid tools like Jive becoming a place where ideas kind of go to die? Thoughts around that?
Sure. I'm really familiar with Jive, the platform itself, but basically the functionality is the same or similar across things. So I don't think it's particular to Jive. It's this idea. I would say that that's not really a that isn't a technology platform problem. That's probably a question of an open mindset, and in organizations that are feeling the pressure of a volatile, uncertain digital world, they are desperately looking for new ideas that help them better understand what's going on and to figure out adaptations to it. So if ideas are going to die in the Jive platform, I would say that's likely because the leaders are not interested in new ideas, new information. It probably means they're not participating in the platform if you're using Jive. And so they're not even, the reason they're not there is they don't really care to hear about new ideas or new information. If they were, that's the place to go. There's a marvelous YouTube video. So it's on YouTube. It's of the Deloitte Australia CEO talking about their use of Yammer and why it's so important for a CEO to participate in these platforms as a way of getting people to be aligned to strategy, engaging on the conversation in front of everyone about what the strategy is and why it is, and how he goes in every day looking for information about clients and how to serve them better. And I think that, if you have the CEO, the senior leadership that's actually feeling the need for ideas and information, they will be in the platform. If they are in the platform, those ideas are not going to sit there and die. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that does. And now, what do you, and here's some other questions. Going back to sort of a cross-silo flow decision making. How do you identify them and get them to happen without getting into the mess, so you described before? I think I'm understanding the question properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's sort of two parts to that. How would you identify a cross-silo decision? You could look backwards in time and sort of look at, in the last 2 to 3 or 4 years, where did we have a real hard time making important decisions? And that'll give you a bit of a heat map to where you have poor cross-silo decision making. You'll get them around product design, marketing thinks that they get to finalize the list of functionality for a new product, whereas the product development people think they do, where you're spending lots of times in meetings with people from other functional groups or geographical groups, that's an indicator of where there is a cross-silo decision, and you simply cannot approach cross-silo decisions, in the same mode that organizations have been. And once you've identified kind of heat map, I mean, one of the ways you could do that is get the senior leadership team to sit down for 1 hour and brainstorm, over the next 2 to 3 years, where are the big decisions that we're going to need to be made that involve, 2 or more groups. And I bet they could do that very quickly. But once you've identified them, then I think you need to say, okay, our past decision-making systems have not worked. We have a system. No one ever wrote it down or designed it. But, it basically involves a bunch of people sitting around with meetings and emails and working on it until something emerges. Let's look at the decisions that we have to make, and let's think about, what would be the process for making those decisions. Who's going to be involved? Who's going to make the decision, which is different than being involved in the decision? Who's going to execute on whatever we're going to put into place? And I have some suggestions for how to do that in the book, but I think organizations potentially could develop it. The problem is there's a lot of politics wrapped up around who gets to be involved in those decisions, who gets to execute on the decisions, the impact on budgets, because part of these decisions are really, we're going to stop this product line, we're going to start that new product line, we're going to stop chasing that client or customer, we're going to start a new client or customer, and that has profound political effects within organizations, and that's why you need the senior leadership involved to be committed to making good decisions, and they can, so they can start to manage those internal politics.
Yeah, good points. Great points. All right, so it looks like we got just time for one more question here. So what are some examples of small changes that will help to get things moving to be able to tackle larger changes or innovation in the future?
Sure. One small change is many organizations have turned on a social networking platform of some type. Typically, they don't go very well. But a small change would be to find whether your organization is currently using one of these platforms and then start to use it yourself within your team or within your functional group. And by using it, I mean really like we have email as perniciously structured all of our information flows and decision-making flows. You actually need to rethink how you make decisions, how you have meetings to take advantage of the new capabilities. Once you do, you'll be really delighted by using them. So you could, number one small thing is you and your team could start using the platform that probably is there, or you can turn on a free one that's available to you. If you're in more of a leadership role, I would say you could take a look at particularly the kind of mindset that you think your organization knows, and if you agree with me that you need one that's around collaborating, connecting, you can think about doing one thing a day, send one email, connect with one person, make one announcement that helps to shift the mindset towards one that's more open, collaborative, and allows for vulnerability, and alternatively look for opportunities to shut down or stop messages or behavior that is more of a command and control type one. So as a leader, you can do that even down to the team level. So those are two small examples. In my book, I've got the CODA has a list of like over 20 things that you can start doing in your organization around building smarter organizations.
Terrific. Well, that's a great way to wrap up. I guess we'd just love to give you any, one final thought that you'd love to leave everyone with, and sort of all of your observations, and over the years, and maybe it's again just some recommendations from the book. What's one final thought you might want to leave everyone with today?
I guess, and I need to work on this. Clearly, I'm not a seasoned author. I guess I would say the starting before you're ready to begin is a really important thought. You need, it is actually an expression of vulnerability to start something, not knowing what the outcome will be, not knowing how to do it, but to just get started. And related to that is like, do something every day. Do a small thing every day. This is like habit forming. You need to form a habit around making innovation and collaboration possible. And so if you start before you're ready and you do at least one thing a day, you'll be amazed at the results you can achieve.
Terrific. I thought you summed that up wonderfully. Well, so again, thanks so much, Gordon, for your insights today. Thanks, everyone, for attending our webinar series. Please stay tuned for future webinar series. We'll certainly let you know when we roll them out. Also, keep an eye on your inbox for the follow-up email with a link to the recording, the content from Rocket Space, and I encourage all of you to go out and get Gordon's book. So thanks again, Gordon, for participating. Thanks all of you for joining us today. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Gordon. Have a great day.